more than 25,000 wrestler profiles, more than 300,000 events, nearly 2 million matches. To put that in some perspective, if let's say you dedicated yourself to sit down at your computer and manually enter 100 match records into a spreadsheet every day, at that rate it would still take you more than 50 years to amass the match records data set that cagematch.net currently provides. And then you'd still have not even scratched the surface toward equaling their database of wrestlers, promotions, tag teams, stables, and more. Our work at Wrestlenomics, we would like to think, goes well beyond the mere nuts and bolts of counting up the business and the numbers of the pro wrestling industry. One of our goals is to understand to what extent those numbers actually reflect the sentiment of people, of wrestling fans. To that end, the so-called inmates, the users of Cage Match, on a scale of 0 to 10, have recorded more than 250,000 event ratings and nearly 1 million match ratings. Along with Jesse Collins, I'm Brandon Thurston. My Cage Match Wrestler ID is 5625. And joining us to discuss all of that and more is the administrator and the founder of Cage Match, Philip Kreikenbohm.
Yeah, no, well, I reached out to Philip first because of all the discussion that had been happening about Cage Match recently. Obviously, Tony Khan kind of mentioned it. Triple H maybe mentioned it. We talked about this on Wrestlenomics earlier. That
I think it's plausible based on what he said about that, based on an infographic that he published or he tweeted about Clash at the Castle.
Yeah,
it was the most well-received international PLE, and it is the highest-rated international PLE for WWE on Cage Match. And Tony Khan is definitely checking his Cage Match ratings every week, I'm sure.
But yeah, so Cage Match had kind of, which, Cage Match for me and Brandon, and surely many people who are listening to this, was always this kind of like super niche outlet where we would go on and we would find it had all this incredible information from all these promotions from around the world. And when you guys still had pictures on there, it definitely helped me understand a lot of Japanese wrestling because I was able to understand who all these wrestlers were, thanks to the images. But it was always this kind of niche thing, and it seems like recently, because it's been mentioned more in the mainstream and by wrestling promoters, it feels like it's caught on. And I don't know if that's kind of being seen on your end or that's just a perception over here, Philip, but I wanted to reach out to you just to talk to you because your project with Cage Match, I think, has been responsible for an enormous amount of wrestling research. It's been responsible for, I think, furthering my own fandom as a fan. I'm sure it's true for many other people. I used other database sites before I found Cage Match, and it's definitely the top one. And so we're just really happy to have you on and get to talk to you. I think this is a pretty rare interview. I don't know, have you done a lot of interviews with the wrestling media before?
Well, this is the first audio interview or video interview I've done. I had two written interviews before, and I guess my guys from the website also had a podcast or have a podcast, and I think I did an episode many years ago, but that's about it. And thank you for having me here, first of all. You mentioned whether we would, on our end, see this kind of newfound attention. And to be honest, I can't say that we do. We have our usual peak over the year during WrestleMania week, when seemingly everyone and their mother is going on the internet and searching for wrestling and also coming to our site. But I haven't seen anything the last couple of weeks that would lead me to believe that this is the moment of, I don't know, catching on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm quite honored to be seen, or that our site is seen as a resource, because, as you said earlier, it was a niche project, and it is still a niche project. It's not a business. It is a free project by people who do this in their spare time. So I'd like to mention this first and foremost, because we often get confused with people that seemingly do have 24/7 access time to the website to react to whatever is written on Twitter or anywhere else. But most of us have a 9-to-5 job, family, and whatever. And so if you see some type of lack of response, sometimes it might just mean that I'm at work.
And I wanted to ask you kind of how you first start. Now, were you involved with the starting of Cage Match?
Yes, I am. I was one of the founding members. So it was three people, three guys, me and two others, associates, back in 2001. In March 2001, when we decided we wanted to do our own website. At that point in time, the German wrestling website scene was, let's say, highly contested, but still in its early phases where not many big names were established. So we said, we can do it ourselves. We can do it better than everyone else. I mean, everyone starts it like that, right? And
the original domain is cagematch.de, is that right?
Exactly, yes, cagematch.de. And I think 10 years ago, I swapped it over to cagematch.net to get it more into the international scene. Yeah. But that's when we started, and the other two guys left within the next year or 2 years because they had other interests. But I kept on. Still have a number of people who've been with me for over 15, 16 years. So we have a great team, a lot of responsible and experienced guys. Some you might actually know, like Strigger. Mm-hmm. You might know from the I'm getting that podcast.
Eastern Lariat podcast, right?
Yeah, he's doing the Lariat podcast. Yeah, correct.
So can you kind of be interested in knowing just a little bit about like how the data is scraped and kind of how you put together? Are people kind of on certain beats, like looking when they're doing data entry and things like that to kind of keep up with results, make sure things are accurate on there? Kind of how do you break down like a week to week schedule when it comes to how you're working?
So what I personally like to have always enjoyed and let's say encourage everyone is to do it at their own pace, do what they think is what they're interested in, to have fun with the project. And by that account, everyone works a little bit differently. And in the past, it was a case of us going on other websites like Wrestling Information Archive and Raja, WWF.com, and what's it called? OWW? There was some kind of Online World of Wrestling, I think it was called. Other big internet archives, and just getting stuff from here, from there, and just putting it together. And over the years, and especially in the last couple of years, we have transitioned more or less into a reactionary site where we get a huge amount of emails from all over the world, from promoters, from fans, from wrestlers who want to get their stuff listed or want to have their promotion listed from all over the world, like China, Philippines, small countries, big countries. And we're talking about the big mainstream US companies. They are going to be updated anyway because our guys are watching the shows. But the smaller stuff, it's just people sending in emails, and then we are just updating them and trying to stay on top of what's right, what we're getting, and what is bogus.
Yeah, and obviously in the professional wrestling industry, that can be a challenge, right? Who's lying? Who's exaggerating things? Have you guys ever been like notably fooled, or someone who was saying things that you kind of took you a while to catch on about, whether it's the size of a company or whether it's attendance or a wrestler lying about things? Like, do you guys ever?
Wrestlers lie all the time.
Yeah.
But, and I don't want this to sound mean. I guess it sounds a little bit mean, but I have a profound love for wrestlers. But some wrestlers, especially if they're in the early stages of their career, sometimes exaggerate their importance in terms of, well, how big they are, and sometimes they disagree with ratings they're getting on their profile, for example. And some of them get agitated, and some of them are also not amused that they have a rating which does not seem to fit their own view of themselves, and then they want to be removed from the site. And then several years later, they come back and say, "Oh, can you add me again? Because the promoters are asking for my profile."
Yeah, I can tell you that, like, so I spent a few years as a trainer, and so we were, training people from scratch, and I can remember, sort of making a big deal about how, like, oh, so and so, you have a cage match profile now. I can click on your name and I can see all the places you've worked. So that's always that's something that I care about. I don't know how much wrestlers generally care about, but that's something that I've always followed.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, me, if I was a wrestler, the first thing I would care about is the opinion of my trainer, and maybe the people in the audience, and not some internet website. To be perfectly honest about
For
this.
sure. I just mean that they could, I could find out information about them easily. But
Yes, sure.
And it's I think it's like also like a milestone for a wrestler to get a cage match profile, especially at the independent level. Not everyone's going to get signed to a major company. Not everyone is going to win a major title or something like that. But getting a cage match profile, having enough matches to get a cage match profile, I think justifies certain things. And you guys don't just take I always think it's interesting that you don't have profiles for people who are having their first match or second match, even if they're like you'll see with like New Japan trainees and things like that. Even someone who you feel like, okay, this person's probably going to be a relevant wrestler at least, and probably will have a profile one day. But you definitely, is there like a cutoff date where you decide, okay, this
not a cutoff date. We have sort of a vetting process. So we are first trying to get some information about these people and the wrestlers, whether they were trained professionally, for example, because we do not want to promote backyard wrestling on our site. I know that many popular and successful wrestlers have come from the backyard scene, but it's still something that I would not willingly promote.
But you're making a distinction between professionals.
I make a distinction, yeah. So you have to be trained professionally for at least a notable amount of time, a significant amount of time. It's not like you had one training session with old school wrestler X at a weekend somewhere, and then you call yourself professional wrestler. It's not like that. And other than that, we also have, aside from this process, we have a long list of wrestlers where we think it wouldn't warrant a profile because we do not have much information about them. If the only thing you have is the name, what is there to make a profile about?
Right, and for people, like if you go on Cage Match, you can see their name, you can see their other gimmicks they might have used or different names that they went by, their height, their weight, some of their social media, signature moves. There's like style choices. Their athletic background, which I always find very interesting. I've definitely learned a lot of the names of different sports in German thanks to the athletic background.
You're just reminding me that I need to find a way to translate all this stuff.
I remember.
I now know that technical wrestler is Techniker, and I know how Mexico is spelled in German, and a few other countries.
Sorry about that. It's not easy to automatically translate everything, and we absolutely do not have the resources to translate everything manually.
No, I think it honestly adds to some of its charm. I remember I was like getting pretty good at it, knowing the sports, and I want to say it was Michael Elgin, and his athletic background was arm wrestling, but it was worded. It was in German, and it's like I don't even want to begin.
Probably.
Yeah. But I saw it and I was like, what is that? That's not, football or basketball or something like that. That's some weird sport.
And
So
German, usually you actually also don't say wrestler. I mean, we internet people, we say wrestler, but in the old school German scene, you would just say catcher. You're a catcher. It's old school
so I don't know,
stuff.
Brandon, as a Buffalo-based wrestler, you might have more enlightenment on this, but I've heard that like border agents will use Cage Match as information to see if people are going to come across the border to work and they might not have a visa. And kind of Cage Match is being used as a research by the authorities to make sure
Yes.
who these
I've
people really
heard
are.
this. I've not experienced it myself.
But Brandon, for people listening at home and for Philip, Brandon is a wrestler based near the U.S.-Canadian border.
Yeah, I live like a 15-minute drive from the Peace Bridge, which is a bridge to Canada. And I should probably be transparent. I'm scraping, so I've just learned Python like a year and a half ago, which is a programming language. And I'm scraping, I have recurring scripts. You can feel free to yell at me and tell me not to do this anymore. But I have recurring scripts on my computer that are scraping Cage Match for match results every day. So I have an up-to-date
You're not the
database.
only one, and there's no way for me to prevent it anyway. So go ahead.
And every week I scrape your wrestler database to keep that up to date, because that's more, the way I've done it, it's a more longer process to scrape the wrestler database. But yeah, I've noticed that there was at least one wrestler I came across who I found like evidence of like this person had a Cage Match profile and he was referenced in match results. But then you go to his page using the ID number, and it says something to the effect of this wrestler has been removed for at their own request or something. And I would guess maybe that has something to do with not wanting to be traced by various authorities internationally.
Actually, most often it's not the authorities. It's just a case of those wrestlers having a real life job and have called in sick in their workplace to wrestle on the weekends or something or somewhere else.
Yes.
And some of them were busted and then were very angry.
Okay.
And so they wanted their profile removed. I mean, this happened at least twice or three times over the course of the last decade or so. I know of one very, very successful current WWE champion who had their profile removed twice for work-related reasons, but came back and is very popular.
I was going to say, I remember wanting to look at that person's profile and finding out that it didn't exist when I first started looking at certain matches. And I'd be like, oh, come on, this person who's in like all these main events locally doesn't have a profile. How am I going to know anything about them? So it's funny you mention it. So the Cage Match ratings. Now, when the website first came out, my understanding is that the ratings weren't a feature. It was something that was added a little bit later.
That's correct. So we added this in 2007.
So what was kind of the motivation or interest in adding that to the site? Kind of an opinion section, basically, for people to have, as opposed to straight data.
Well, to be honest, for me, it was a natural progression. When I started out, I think the first 4 years, I wrote all the event results and everything myself in HTML, and it was a pain at some point. And that's in 2005, I wrote the database, or at least the first iteration of it. And then it somewhat steamrolled. We started off with wrestlers, promotions, and events. And then from that point, we got tag teams, stables. Let's do promos. Let's do, how can we add matches, recommended matches, something like this. And if we have this, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could all comment on it? And if we can comment on it, let's give it a rating. I was inspired actually a little bit by IMDb, the Internet Wrestling, the Internet Movie Database. And this is actually one of the inspirations for adding the rating system. And I think it was a success from day one. It was hugely popular, and it has taken over basically the the identity of the site in a sense, because in the past we have been a news site, we had message boards, we had documentations, huge amounts of articles and whatever. And right now we are just the huge database and the rating system, which is fine. I mean it's our strongest point, and it's a point where users can interact. That's about it. It was, for me, it was a natural progression.
And we've seen, like, Dave Meltzer has talked about this. Like, if you ask him, his star ratings are the least important thing that he does. It's just a thing he adds to the end of articles. But it's also the number one thing that Dave Meltzer is known for the most part. Like, if you were to ask fans, people would talk about the 5-star scale and things like that. Do you feel that way with Cage Match? Is now, like, the Cage Match rating is more important than the actual database, and certainly it seems to be what most people talk about when it comes to Cage Match, as opposed to as a resource, where I think as a resource it's still kind of niche. It's still something that
absolutely, yes,
hardcore people like me are going on every day to see what the results were for a Big Japan show that took place earlier this morning. But for maybe fans that maybe are not as interested in the wide world of wrestling and maybe only like one promotion or two promotions, the rating system is something very easy to latch onto and to investigate, wonder how good are some of these people, and this person only has this rating, I'm going to give them this rating, or things like that.
Oh yes, a huge problem. So first, to your first point, in regards to what I think in comparison to Meltzer maybe, and to his point, I think he's absolutely right. The ratings are a fun thing to do, to have a little bit of statistics and maybe play around with it and see for yourself maybe what have I missed in the world of wrestling, which is considered good by someone else. But it's not the be all and end all. So there's no, if you have a 9.5 rating or an 8.5 or a 6.5, for me, if I enjoy what I'm seeing, it doesn't really matter. So I think a lot of people on the internet, and probably off the internet as well, are hung up on numbers and rankings and a little bit too much, and have a tendency to be personally outraged if their favorite wrestler or wrestling promotion or the most recent greatest match they've ever seen is not at the top of whatever list that they're seeing. And to a degree, I understand.
I have experienced this also. I agree. People will be outraged if your numbers do not validate their opinion.
Yes, and for me personally, I think the way the database or the rating system is set up is that I consider everything above a 7, actually everything above a 6 is above average, and everything above a 7 or 8 is worse to look at, worse to view. Even if you do not casually have interest in whatever promotion or wrestler you look at. That's how I see it. That's if I'm browsing the site, and I do this also daily, and thinking of maybe, I don't know, a show that might be interesting to look at. If it has a 7, I'm not thinking, this is not worth my time. It's only a 7 or something like this. This is bullshit. I'm sorry about cursing. Is that a problem?
It's okay.
No, English is your second language, so we'll let it slide.
So, forgotten what I wanted to say. It's just, for me, I daily have to deal with people, users, let's call them fans, who have a tribalistic behavior and view, where they disregard or even discredit any other points of view. And this is a little bit annoying, a little bit discouraging, and a little bit sad, because that's not the point of the website. This is not the point of being a wrestling fan, right? At least not for me. I'd like everyone to enjoy it, what they're seeing, and if someone else enjoys something else, more power to them.
Yeah, and there's a I always think of it as like a scale. The scale is going to be different, I think, for anyone who's voting. I'm sure
Absolutely.
there are people who, you said you kind of institute it and you have the little guide of like, okay, this means
Yes.
good, this means very good. But some people are just like, you know what, if anything that they like, they'll give it a 10. And there's really no way to kind of like set up a scale that I feel like everyone is going to agree on and everyone's going to agree how to
That
set
is
things up like that. And I think one of the things that's interesting to me as a fan of a lot of different kind of styles of wrestling is that I feel like each promotion in its own way has kind of its own scale that I kind of use to assess whether something I think is probably going to be real quality or not. And because different fans are watching different things, fans that are watching WWE are the people who are rating WWE are probably by and large not the same people who are maybe rating a Joshi promotion, or maybe they're rating a European promotion. Certainly some of them will be, but the audiences are going to be very different. And so I always think that, like, each you can only kind of judge, like if you're looking at like different shows from the same promotion, you kind of got to use the scale that I associate with that promotion, as opposed to a general, like, this, one show being rated an 8.5 is different in one promotion, to me, is probably going to be different than another promotion's show being rated 8.5, because the fan bases are different. And I think maybe some people don't understand that. Some people, I saw, it was probably one of the Raws from a few weeks ago, but someone was saying, like, this Raw is rated higher than, Forbidden Door. How is that possible? This is wrong. And I was like, well, they're totally different shows, and they're probably being rated by different people. Why? Like, you can't, if you think Forbidden Door is better than Raw, like, this cage match rating isn't going to matter. But some people get very personal and tribalistic with the ratings. And I think comparing promotion to promotion is very difficult, given who's voting on them.
I absolutely agree. And personally, what I was always thinking about, well, not always, but over the past couple of years, especially since the inception of All Elite Wrestling, I was thinking about maybe in setting some kind of rule that if you're commenting on a show, you're not allowed to talk about another promotion in your rating. Focus on what you are rating and not on what someone else has written or what you have seen from another promotion or another wrestler 10 years ago. Doesn't matter. It's highly antagonistic and tribalistic, as you said. And I'm trying to stay on top of it. And you mentioned earlier that there are always people who are maybe going a little bit overboard in their 10-point ratings. And we have some ways, some automated ways to identify users who have, let's say, a suspicious behavior, and we try to first talk to them, warn them that maybe please have a look at the rules and maybe think about a little bit how you come across. Sometimes in nicer words and sometimes in not so nice words, depending on how the user is. And if there's no way to reconcile this, then we also remove them from the site. And sometimes they get very angry, then they post on Reddit or Twitter and whatever, and suddenly we are biased. I mean, to be honest, before you contacted me, I didn't even know that there was an outrage apparently on Twitter about cage match being biased.
It's very niche.
To be honest, I've received emails from just today being that we are biased against WWE, against AEW. We are against pro wrestling in Japan. We hate Joshi. We hate everything. We hate everything, and we have the side to spur the misery in those people. Apparently, it's
Yes. It's
Well, you
just
see,
something about numbers. Like if you deal in numbers and you are publishing numbers, I think we're bonding here. But I guess the one of the events that I think started some of this attention is just that since Triple H has been the head of creative instead of Vince McMahon, so that's late July and forward. And I've been watching this closely. Maybe you've seen me, make some charts and some tweets about this. That Raw and SmackDown are generally being rated more highly. Each program is generally being rated more highly after Vince is gone versus before Vince is gone. And there are, as I'm looking at the screen right now. Maybe I'll share my screen, but there are more votes in this post Vince era and we're still like, for a lot of these, some of these are under 100. There's like 75, 113, 75 for the last three. So it's in the high, under 100 level. Some of them are over 100. So it's more votes. And like, I don't know if you're seeing, I think people are believing that there's a bias to make the ratings higher. Just if you could tell us like what you've seen, and is there anything to that? And you've already said quite a bit about dealing with sort of bad faith voting, and or even the notion I've seen people put out there that there's bots, that WWE has mobilized its bot army to influence the cage match ratings. Do you see this?
No, I don't see any of it. So we actually do have some sort of a bot detection algorithm. I won't say that it's 100% perfect because I don't think such a thing it is, but at least it's looking for some kind of non-human rating behavior. I don't see any of it. But coming back to your question, the reason, personally, the reason why it's rated more highly is because some people have, regained interest in WWE in the post-Vince era and have enjoyed what they're seeing. Maybe they have stopped watching for several years and they came back. Maybe they used the period of maybe a little bit of struggle for All Elite Wrestling to come back to WWE and give it a shot and see and like what they see. That's what I'm feeling that what's happening. And in regards to bad face votings and bad actors trying to downrate or uprate WWE versus All Elite Wrestling and vice versa, this happens every week, and most of these are removed. But sometimes it's just people have not liking a show. And
are there certain rules established? Like if I just wanted to create a fresh account right now, could I vote on a match or a show immediately and have that vote counted?
No, you can't anymore. So about a year ago or so, I established a rule where you have to wait 7 days after your first comment before you can make a rating. And I established this because after every AEW pay-per-view, every single one, there were people giving 0 ratings and 1 ratings for everything, left and right.
So you're saying you saw individual users who were giving
absolutely
low ratings across many events.
Individual users, sometimes registering with multiple accounts, using the same IP addresses. Those get banned immediately. Absolutely. And but it's not coming back to, oh yes, we are AEW biased. No, it's not only against AEW, it's also against WWE. We have also a couple of bad face actors who are coming back time and time again. You can ban them as often as you want. They get a new email address, they get a new computer, whatever they get. I mean, it's not
you say you're tracking IP addresses too, right?
I mean, we track them for the if you send a rating, we track your IP address. Yes, but this is, I mean, is normal. It's also written in the site rules if you want to read them. Nevertheless, it's what was the point? Yeah, there's this one guy who's coming back and continually uprating all AEW matches, the highest rated, the big tag team match between the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Hangman and other stuff. Especially, while I'm on that topic, especially the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega have seemingly encouraged a non-Gaussian way of approval. Either you hate them or you love them, seemingly, because there's so many users over the years who were notable for either giving always 0 ratings to Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks, or right now Will Ospreay, or only 10s. Everything that they do is awesome. Everything that they do is horrible. It's bipolar. It's not. There's no nuance in any of this. And those
to
users
be clear,
usually,
if I was a user, an inmate on Cage Match, right,
Yes.
and I was regularly casting votes and giving ratings, and they were fairly normal looking, but then I also just decided I don't really like Kenny Omega's matches and I rated them very low, or I don't like Will Ospreay's matches and I rated them very low. You wouldn't ban a user like that?
No. If you're usually, I mean, the rating system is set up in a way that if you are rating out of the, let's say, the outside of the average rating or current total rating and more than 2 or 3 rating points apart, then you have to give a comment. And you have to give a specific number of characters, minimum characters. So we read those comments, and if it's fairly in line with what this user has been posting over the years, and if they have a clear pattern where they, for example, let's say you watch WWE. If every rating you give to WWE wrestlers and shows is a 10, then for me, you're a suspicious user. But if you have a nuanced rating pattern, you say, like, I like this guy, but I don't like this guy. Or this show was awesome, but this show was quite all right. Then you're not under any suspicion. And the same with quality wrestling others. But there are some people, and I would say maybe, 5% of the users, but some are very obviously trying to downrate specific wrestlers, specific shows, specific promotions.
But kind of the nature of rating systems, I think in some ways, are that people will only be motivated to leave a rating if they have a particularly strong reaction to something, right? Do you guys have Yelp in Germany?
I heard the name, but no.
So it's just it's kind of like Google. I guess Google has 5-star reviews. Like basically, they're just you could.
Now I know what you mean.
Yeah,
something
so just like
using a rating for a gas station or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so the
restaurants especially.
Yeah, and the joke is that no one ever leaves like a 3-star review on Yelp. It's either 5 stars or no stars, because you either got an amazing experience that's worth logging into your Yelp account and leaving a review, or it was so bad that you have to feel like you have to submarine it. And I think in some ways, like if I was a Cage Match user, I might not be critically like examining every single wrestler and be like, do I think this person is a 7 or do I think this person is an 8? But certain wrestlers would be like, oh, well, like Will Ospreay is the best wrestler in the world. He has to get a 10. Is there able to kind of identify certain patterns, I guess, that were people who are only voting 10 or maybe and only voting 0 or 1?
Yes, definitely.
That aren't maybe doing it necessarily in bad faith, but only when they feel the extreme motivation to vote?
Yes. So again, coming to the first part of your point, personally, and I mean this from a trying to be a neutral observer or reader of the site, If the rating system were full of people who are basically only rating zeros and tens, I would not find the rating system very appealing. That's why I encourage through the rules and direct contact and warnings or whatever, our users to have a more nuanced way of looking at things, to trying to have an average rating of around 6 or 7. So to think about trying to, if I really like this one, there must be something else which I don't like, and there must be something which I'm quite ambivalent about, or which I just find average. And it's not something where we are like, oh, you haven't done this in the first, I don't know, 5, 6 ratings, now you are on the chopping block. No, but it's over a longer period of time, over years. We have many users who've been there for 10 plus years and who have the habit of, well, rating everything that they see and have established for themselves some kind of rule set where they're saying, okay, my average is around, I don't know, 6, 7, and some stuff is better, some stuff is worse, and some stuff is really great, some stuff is bad. And there are those, to come back to your point, who are like, I would call them hit and run raters, who are only rating the best match on the show, the worst match on the show, or more. Maybe a better example is only the matches of the year, something like this. That's why you see some matches being proportionally higher rated, even if they are very bad. Famous example is Matt Hardy against Sammy Guevara from one of the 2020, I think it was All Out 2020 from AEW when Matt Hardy had the concussion. And it was obviously a lot of brutal things happening, and I do not want to get into any details there because my opinion doesn't matter. But what I see is a lot of people. I've seen a lot of users who have only rated this one match from AEW, and then with a 0, because there was outrage on the internet. And if there's outrage on the internet, then obviously there must be something to it. Now, I don't know, depending on what the other things they rated is. Have they actually seen that match, or are they just rating it a 0 because there was obviously something bad happening and someone must be made responsible?
We're talking about the Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy match from All Out 2020, I think. In
2020, yes. Okay. And there are other matches like that. Yoshino, what was her name? There was some kind of Japanese woman who was wrestler who was taking advantage of her opponent, famously.
Yes.
And stuff like this. Chris Benoit is also a very hot topic. It's not easy, and some people who
Yoshiko versus
Yoshiko, yeah. Some users seem to be drawn to only rating these hot topics, and it depends. Sometimes I can't give you a rule of thumb or anything, but depending on how they're rating, when they rate, they might get away with it, but most of the time, I don't think they're adding anything valuable to the site for a reader, a neutral reader. So we usually get in contact with them and say, okay, yeah, this is not helping anyone. Either change your rating behavior or we will remove it.
One of the things that I enjoy about this rating system is the rule that you're not supposed to comment on other people's ratings in your rating assessment.
Yes.
And I think that helps a lot. Obviously, not everyone follows the rules all the times, but the fact that it's enforced, I think, does create a good environment where people aren't as reactionary to, oh, this person gave it a 10, they're stupid and their reasons are stupid. And my review, instead of reviewing the match, is going to be like a personal attack on this person who I disagree with. And I'm really impressed just in general, the kind of effort that goes into maintaining the integrity of the ratings, because you could easily just throw up your hands and say, it's a free for all. If you think the ratings are dumb, whatever. But you guys have really made an attempt, I think, to make sure that there's integrity here, to make sure that years from now we can go back and look at matches and things like that and understand, and they'll have value for researchers and things like that. And even though it's just the opinions of a certain segment of fans, it does, I think, carry weight when people go back and look at what are the best matches from this promotion, or what are the best matches in the cage match database and things like that. And I'm really impressed by the amount of work that goes into kind of maintaining the integrity of that.
And just to add to that, I think you can even look. I mean, every match rating and event rating is a live rating. You can always vote on. It's not as if you can only vote for a match or an event within a month or something like that. I can vote for a match from the 1950s right now if I wanted to. And I think
if it was broadcasted and it has a time attached to it.
Okay. So I can't just vote for some house show that I definitely didn't see. And I think you even have it organized as a way to look at, like, in what year, give me the average for each year or something like that, right?
Yes. First of all, Jesse, thank you. We're trying to maintain a high level of standard. I mean, I don't know how successful we are, but that was always my goal, to have a website that I could personally be proud of, that I personally like to visit and browse. It's an ongoing struggle, but I think it's worth it. And I completely agree with you that, for me personally, it's a joy to just browse the website and see the relationship. You get this kind of Wikipedia thing going on, where you just click on one link and then you're clicking on the next one, and then you go to this match, and then you go to this show, and I remember this guy, and you click there, and he was associated, he had a match against X, and and you're just going from side to side and just going through it. And you're reading the comments of people, which is always very interesting. Just coming back to the point you made about users not interacting with each other, this was actually another strong rule that I wanted to establish. We had the option, or I had the option, to add something like a plus-minus system for each comment, where you could downrate each other's comments or something like this. But I decided against it, because I don't want this to be a popularity contest between users. We already have Reddit for that. And I also didn't want this to be a discussion, for a poor discussion forum between wrestling fans, which devolves into hatred. We have Twitter for that. I wanted to have a website where we can, or a place where comments are on point, focused on what is being rated on the event, the show, or whatever, so that it's relevant 10, 20 years from now. Right now you can go to the site and read up on shows from the 2000s or the 90s or whatever, and see comments that are 10 years old, and they are still interesting to read, because they are not targeting whatever some guy said in another comment. It also, personally, I think, makes for a much healthier community, because as you guys probably know, anytime you have user interaction, you have a lot of toxicity to deal with, whether you want it or not. Even if you have the bestest of intentions and the greatest community in the world.
So you kind of mentioned this earlier, and without getting too far into specifics, I'd be curious to know, like, what are kind of your interactions with, like, different promoters and different wrestlers, and kind of how does that factor into how the site is run? Obviously, you said you get emails all the time from people asking to have stuff updated on the site, but kind of what kind of goes into kind of working with talent and promoters and things like that, and being able to vet some of the stuff. Like, if I send you an email, and I say, I just had a wrestling card and it had these are the list of matches and it's all wrestlers you've never heard before. If I just made this up, what kind of vetting process would you go into to figure that out? Is there like research done into that to kind of make sure that I'm not lying about it, or God forbid
Yes,
they attach an attendance figure?
we usually try to get some research on it. First of all, you probably should have some kind of proof that you actually had a wrestling card, that you maybe have pictures, or maybe you have a website. Maybe it was posted somewhere else already, not by you, but by someone else. Maybe you've already been in the business for some time, or maybe you are in an area where we have other contacts which we could contact and ask around. Hey, there's this guy who says he just ran this and that arena and had 5,000 people in attendance. Sounds bogus. What do you think of it? And I mean, we can't catch everything. That's true, but we also have let's say, a user community which is helping us vet this kind of stuff. So we have a lot of active users from Brazil, from China, from Russia, from the US, obviously, from the European countries, South Africa, all kinds of people who are local fans who are interested in their wrestling world, their community, and knowledgeable. And there are usually more than one person. So if one person is coming up with, there was this show, we can ask another person, how about this? Is this reliable? So these are our attempts to vet everything to the best accuracy that we can provide.
You're doing a lot more than most people in wrestling media when it comes to verification of reports and rumors.
Yes. I imagine you're aware of Wrestling Data, which is another internet database.
Yes, they're good friends of ours.
Okay. I was wondering if you had an opinion about that, and I think they're from Germany. The people behind
Yes,
that
they are
site
from Germany as well.
also?
The German website is genickbruch.com. So they didn't translate it literally into English because it would mean something like breaking your neck. So it wouldn't fly that well in English, I guess. Or the website was already taken, who knows. Nevertheless, they started, I think, a couple of weeks or months earlier than we did. And so we've been side by side all the time. We've been neck and neck. Sometimes we've been competing a little bit in the 2000s, and when we were younger and more competitive spirits, maybe. But at this point, I mean, they've been around for 21 years as well, just as we are, and they are doing an amazing job. They just have a different different style to it. They doing stuff differently, and that's great. I think variety is always great, and it's not like we are losing anything by having, let's say, this kind of soft competition, because I mean, we are not winning anything either if someone visits us. We are not.
One of the main differences that I'm aware of is that Wrestling Data has more older match results, and Cage Match has more diversity of independent companies and things like that.
Well, what they are doing or have done in the past, at least, is also using a lot of script-based scraping of the wrestling internet, and more automated filling the database. And they also integrated, I think, mixed martial arts into their database, which we are not doing at all. So if you're interested in that, you could visit them, for example. But I mean, to be honest, I haven't visited their site in a couple of years. But
and by contrast, Cage Match this is like manual data entry that's updating all of these match results.
Yes, everything is done manually. Yes, by a team of 30, 40 people.
I'd be curious, just if you wanted to share, like, is there any like humorous things you can share from like something that was just wrong on the site that is in hindsight very funny that it was wrong or incorrect?
Wrong or incorrect? That was funny. No, nothing really comes to mind. In regards to something that was incorrect, there were, I mean, speaking of wrestling data, both wrestling data and us in the past had problems with team members or younger team members copying stuff from the other side. And actually, both sides, we have at least the two owners, the owner from Wrestling Data and myself, we have an agreement to not copy of each other, content of each other. But there's sometimes stuff being copied regardless. And in regards to funny stuff is that there were also honeypots being set up by both sides, like getting the match times slightly wrong from the actual time, and then seeing if the wrong time shows up on the other side. So this has happened in the past, and maybe it's not exactly what you were asking for, but I thought it was quite fun. Another funny thing that we have is that we had in the past April Fool's jokes that were made by the team, which were I'm not going to go into too much details because it's going to be exceptionally unfunny for American audiences.
Is this the mysterious German footballer?
Yes, it's Frank Reiner, the German soccer player or football player, who for many years was showing up on April Fool's Day and joining up with John Laurinaitis to start up a WrestleMania in a, let's say, small village somewhere in Germany. And it was always a news story that we poured out that was 2/3 believable. And then at the very end, it was coming down to, yes, and this is because of this guy and John Laurinaitis. And as you know, they were doing the thing in the WrestleMania. And it's the funny thing about this, at least for me personally, is that this guy, Frank Reiner, has a profile on the website, but it's not public. You can only view it if you search for it, or not search for it, but if you click on it in one of these news articles. So you never find it in any wrestler search or something like this. But it's just a little in-joke that we try to put a little inside jokes for those people who have been around for a long time.
You gotta pop yourself sometime.
Absolutely. Tess would know.
Brandon, do you have anything else?
So I have people have told me that, you know, maybe there's some, in terms of what the results are that are available on the site, maybe there's some regional biases, so that, like, say the Northeast, people, sometimes I'll try to get an idea of like how experienced a wrestler is, especially in independent wrestling, where, like, you know, there's a lot of wrestlers who've been wrestling for like 20 years, but they've maybe been having 6 or 10 matches a year, as opposed to somebody who's been wrestling, let's say, like 6 years or something, but they've been wrestling, you know, many times a month. So when I've met wrestlers from the West Coast, you know, they've always complained, well, there's not enough, they don't have all of this stuff and all this, and of course they don't have, you know, Cage Match doesn't have every match that I've ever wrestled either, but they seem to not have as much for, you know, for at least people on the U.S. West Coast, and I imagine there's analogs across other regions as well. So,
well, the best response I can make to that is let us know, send us those results, and if you are interested, and you can also join the team and help out. We have a lot of American team members who are helping out with individual parts of the. I guess mostly the East Coast, but we are just fans. We're trying to do a good job, and if you are a wrestler who thinks that he is highly underappreciated or underrepresented on Cage Match, either you ignore it because it's really not maybe that much important to your career, or if it really bothers you, get in contact. I mean, what's the internet for, right?
Yeah. I guess we could just end this just saying that, like, I use Cage Match for so much, and it's just like I said, I've got scripts that are running every day to keep this up to date, and the fact that you guys have wrestler IDs so that I can uniquely identify, because obviously wrestlers change their names all the time. But that's helped me a lot to do all different kinds of research, and I'm doing things like with the quarter hours and with YouTube videos when we're trying to analyze, who's most associated with the really successful quarter hours of YouTube videos. I'm trying to write scripts that will find a wrestler's name and then tag it with their Cage Match ID so I can uniquely identify them. So I'm leaning on a lot of Cage Match data to try to
that's awesome. I'm
the work
really happy about that.
Yeah. So thank you. Please keep your site going. You're doing a great job.
Absolutely.
All right, and we're gonna wrap things up by reading Brandon's Cage Match article live.
Read my reviews.
Well, you all actually. I was hoping you would have more. You only have one rating.
Yeah,
I was hoping
my Cage Match ID is 5625.
I was gonna create a bot. I was trying to create bots to downvote you.
Me.
Be
yeah.
like, Brandon.
Well, you got a respectable rating.
Yeah, he's got an 8.
Nobody really cared about me until that Jay Freddy match at Beyond in 2019. That's where I really hit the media.
So
world.
it says. But...
And you also already have career highlights, so that's fine.
I'm pretty old, so yeah, I had a lot of time to gather that stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty old as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Philip, for coming on and agreeing to do this. I know when I reached out to you through an email, I wanted to be like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like, I don't think there are bots running Cage Match, but I think it would be something interesting to talk about because I guess in our like kind of small hardcore niche of wrestling fans, of people that watch Cage Match, it's been something that we had become aware of, which are like these WWE shows are doing good. Who's doing it? And you got people saying that they're bots and things like that. But I think it's really interesting to get into like the I think most people wouldn't know the amount of work and research that has gone into, not getting results, working with people to corroborate on those results so that information is accurate, and also the kind of work that goes into making sure that the rating system has some integrity to it and that there are these, things set up to kind of prevent bots, to prevent people from just flying by and spamming ratings and things like that. I think a lot of people maybe didn't understand that. So it was great to have you on today and kind of talk about all of those things, the kind of work that goes into maintaining this site and keeping it as a valuable resource for all of us who love wrestling.
Yeah. I would add, like, I think that anytime you're dealing with something that is quantified, whether that's TV ratings or attendance or people's opinions about wrestling matches, or votes in an election, when people don't see the result that they want to see that validates their opinion, or when there's a normal state of affairs that's starting to change, I think then people maybe somewhat naturally start to question the process. And I think that's
it happens in every fandom, I would say.
Yeah.
Talk to Star Wars fans, talk to Disney fans, talk to gaming fans. Well, maybe don't talk to politicians, but they would all also tell you that people have a tendency to maybe exaggerate a little bit in one way or another.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Philip. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's been a pleasure.